Let's begin in Chicago wheat. Currently on Chicago wheat right now, you have the market trading 3/4 higher on the March. Well, check that. Now a quarter lower at 562. So there again, very jumpy markets here. Kansas City on that March contract. Right now, they're taking the spurs to it. We're 7 1/4 higher at 497.5, almost on the high of the day. The Minneapolis wheat also surging ahead here after the report came out. It was 4.5 higher at 556.5. Here to talk about it, we have Scott Gecas at the trading floor in Chicago. He's with the Fox Group. And I just wanted to point out, I also had a note here that USDA admits there's a lot of crop out in the field. They pointed at several specific regions like Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas. And they say that they will send NASS out and resurvey some of those affected areas where there's crop out in the field, probably in the early spring. So look for adjusted numbers moving forward here, Scott.
Yeah, well, that just seems to be, the standard or quota moving forward. Over the last couple of USDA reports, everything was being revised left and right. So, I mean, that's just staying the course of what's been going on. I will say the market, as far as the option flow and as far as the trading volume goes, it pretty much hit right spot on. There's really no big surprise. But if you go back to what I was talking about with the option flow over the last week and a half or so, for the soybeans, we had upside call skew $4 plus. Then it went all the way back to flat to being just about plus $2 right before the report. And now it's pretty much flat. So that just tells me that, there was the traders on the floor as well as the market wasn't really looking for any like fireworks or random just blowout numbers one way or the other. So it just seems like it came in line without that big surprise one way or the other.
So much expectation heading into that report, and now that it's out, everybody wondering what to do. And now the next big thing coming up, of course, will be the Phase 1 signing with China on January 15th. So that could have a market impact, maybe. We'll see. We'll pause right here, Scott, and we'll come back and we'll take another look at that livestock trade. A lot to talk about there and sort out, and we'll visit that when we come back. Scott Gecas is our guest. He's with the Fox Group in Chicago at the CME trading floor on the edge of the floor right now. All right, let's look at our livestock trade. And with the big gyrations that we were talking about in the corn market, I wondered if that would have any impact here on the livestock. So far, live cattle are hanging on to higher prices. We have February 48 higher at 127.20 right now. On the April, we're 45 higher. Meanwhile, on the feeder cattle market, we're higher here as well. And we have the nearby January, up 7. We have March 30 higher. And look at the lean hogs. Lean hogs have been under pressure for quite a bit. Now we have the February lean hogs now 32 higher, and we're at 67.35. You have the April contract gaining a dime now at 74.55. So it's a little bit of a different tone than what we had earlier in the day. The April and May had been lower earlier this morning, but they have come back now. What do you think may happen here as we head into the weekend on this livestock trade?
Yeah, well, in the cattle market, we're just going to focus on the cash trade. So we have the Australian wildfires. It's tightening stocks over in Australia. So that's a little bit of a bullish catalyst for the U.S. beef, which has been on a complete upside trend, which we expect that to continue unless if the cash drops. So that's what we're going to focus on with that. And with the hog market, we're just going to completely focus on the exports. We already know that African swine fever is taking a full effect. We already know that there's huge Chinese demand. We just need those imports and the exports to consistently show up, not the week on, week off like it has been over the last few months.
All right, we do have the beef and pork export numbers from this morning. We can revisit that here for a second. The beef at a very low 8,100 tons that were sold last week. Keep in mind it was a holiday week. The pork, 26,800 tons. The key buyer this time around, believe it or not, actually was China, 7,200 tons of that total. And they were followed closely by Mexico in there for 7,100 tons. South Korea about 5,500 tons. And Japan was in for 4,100 tons of U.S. pork last week. Vietnam also in for 1,000 tons as well. So, Scott, thank you so much for talking with us. Appreciate it. I know it's been a very busy day, but we do appreciate the time. Scott Gecas happens to be with the Fox Group right there in Chicago.